We're back now with breaking news. President Biden set to sign a $95 billion foreign aid package. We are looking at live pictures right now outside the White House. Now, this package includes funding for Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. It was passed by the Senate overnight after months of limbo on Capitol Hill. The funding also includes a provision that could potentially lead to a nationwide ban on TikTok here in the U.S. As we're watching Mr. Biden walking to the podium here, let's go ahead and listen in.
Day for Europe, and it's a good day for world peace, for real. This is consequential. I just signed into law the national security package that was passed by the House of Representatives this weekend and by the Senate yesterday. It's going to make America safer, it's going to make the world safer, and it continues America's leadership in the world, and everyone knows it. It gives vital support to America's partners, and so they can defend themselves against threats to their sovereignty and to the lives and freedom of their citizens. And it's an investment in our own security, because when our allies are stronger, and I want to make this point again and again, when our allies are stronger, we are stronger. I'm grateful to all those in Congress, Democrats, Republicans, Independents, who voted for this bill. It's a path to my desk. It was a difficult path. It should have been easier, and it should have gotten there sooner. But in the end, we did what America always does. We rose to the moment. We came together, and we got it done. Now we need to move fast, and we are. Over 2 years, Russia has been responsible for a brutal campaign against Ukraine. They've killed tens of thousands of Ukrainians, bombed hospitals, deliberately picked them out, bombed hospitals, kindergartens, grain silos, tried to plunge Ukraine into a cold and dark winter by striking their power grid. Ukrainians have fought back, defending their country and their families with extraordinary courage. Many of you have been there with me many times. It's amazing what they do. I mean, it's amazing against such a larger military. Ukraine has regained over half the territory that Russia took from them in this invasion. And they won important victories against Russia's Navy. But make no mistake about it, they're a fighting force with the will and the skill to win. The will and the skill to win. For months, while MAGA Republicans are blocking aid, Ukraine has been running out of artillery shells and ammunition. Meanwhile, Putin's friends keep keeping them well supplied. Iran sent him drones. North Korea has sent him ballistic missiles and artillery shells. China is providing components and know-how to boost Russia's defense production. With all this support, Russia has ramped up its airstrikes against Ukrainian cities and critical infrastructure, rained down munitions on you brave Ukrainians defending their homeland. And now America is going to send Ukraine the supplies they need to keep them in the fight. This weekend, there were reports, and I find this amazing, there were reports of cheers breaking out of the trenches in eastern Ukraine. Probably came from one of your folks, a reporter or someone, I'm not sure where it came from. But that they're cheering as they watch the House vote in support for Ukraine. It's not like they don't understand what we've done. Not like they don't understand how critical this is for them. I'm making sure the shipments start right away. In the next few hours, literally a few hours, we're going to begin sending in equipment to Ukraine for air defense munitions, for artillery, for rocket systems, and armored vehicles. You know, this package is literally an investment, not only in Ukraine's security, but in Europe's security, in our own security. We're sending Ukraine equipment from our own stockpiles. Then we'll replenish those stockpiles with new products made by American companies here in America. Patriot missiles made in Arizona, Javelins made in Alabama, artillery shells made in Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Texas. In other words, we're helping Ukraine while at the same time investing in our own industrial base, strengthening our own national security, and supporting jobs in nearly 40 states all across America. You know, the United States is not acting alone, to state the obvious. Our allies in Europe and around the world who've constantly been asking me, are we going to step up? We're not going to walk away, are we? How many, and some of you have been in these international meetings with me, they're very concerned. Had we failed to step up, Lord only knows what would happen to the cohesion in NATO. They're also sending significant help to Ukraine. We're all standing together against this brutal dictator. As I've argued for months, This is directly in the United States' national security interest. If Putin triumphs in Ukraine, the next move of Russian forces could very well be a direct attack on a NATO ally. And you all know full well that invoking Article 5 of the North Atlantic Treaty would be the first thing that comes to mind, which declares an attack on one as an attack on all. If Putin attacks a NATO ally like he's attacking Ukraine today, we'd have no choice but to come to their aid, just like our NATO allies came to our aid after the September 11th attacks here. That's why we're supporting and surging support now to Ukraine, to stop Putin from drawing the United States into a war in Europe and in the future. You know, it seems to me we should take a little bit of a step back and realize what a critical moment this was for the United States and for NATO. This is a historical moment. In the last 2 years, we've helped unify, strengthen, and expand NATO. Imagine if instead we had failed to step up now and support Ukraine. All those gains would have begun to unravel. The cohesion of NATO would have been weakened, and our national security would have been undermined without any question. You know, Putin started this war believing he could easily break the will of the people of Ukraine. When that failed, he changed his strategy a little bit, thinking we could break the will of NATO, break the will of the United States, break our will. Well, he's failed again. America stands with our friends. We stand up against dictators. We bow to no one, certainly not Vladimir Putin. Look, this bill also includes vital support for Israel. Just 10 days ago, we saw Iran launch over 100 missiles and drones at Israel. And because of them and other allies across the world, including from the region, no serious damage occurred. An unprecedented attack that followed years of Iran supporting Hezbollah, Hamas, and proxies of their own attack on Israel. They fund these guys. My commitment to Israel, I want to make clear again, is ironclad. The security of Israel is critical. It will always make sure that Israel has what it needs to defend itself against Iran and terrorists it supports. And with this aid, the United States is going to help replenish Israel's air defense and provide other critical events so Iran can never carry out the destruction it intended with its attack 10 days ago. But at the same time, this bill significantly increases humanitarian assistance we're sending to the innocent people of Gaza who are suffering badly. They're suffering the consequences of this war that Hamas started. And we've been working intently for months to get as much aid to Gaza as possible. This bill includes $1 billion for additional humanitarian aid in Gaza. We're going to immediately secure that aid and surge it, including food, medical supplies, clean water. And Israel must make sure all this aid reaches the Palestinians in Gaza without delay. And everything we do is guided by the ultimate goal of bringing these hostages home, securing a ceasefire, and setting the conditions for an enduring peace. You know, there's more that this bill does, as you all know, the press here, including providing for support to strengthen even further our allies and partners in the Indo-Pacific region, as well as humanitarian aid to places including Haiti, Sudan, and Somalia. But there's one thing this bill does not do: border security. You know, just this year I proposed and negotiated and agreed to the strongest border security bill this country has ever seen. It was bipartisan. It should have been included in this bill. And I'm determined to get it done for the American people. But I'll come back to that at another moment, another time. This is a reminder of what America can do when we come together, despite our differences. I want to thank everyone in Congress who made it possible, especially the bipartisan leadership. Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, Leader Jeffries, Leaders Schumer and McConnell. They don't always agree, but when it matters most, they stepped up and did the right thing. And I mean this sincerely. History will remember this time. History will remember this moment. For all the talk about how dysfunctional things are in Washington, when you look over the past 3 years, we see that time and again on the critical issues, we've actually come together. It hadn't always been easy. But when it's come time to decide to rebuild America, we did it with the bipartisan infrastructure law, which is just underway. When it came time to invest in our semiconductor industry, and technology of the future. We did it with the Chips and Science Act. And when it came time to stand with Ukraine and Israel and help the people of Gaza, we did that as well. At the end of the day, most of us, whether we're Democrats, Republicans, or Independents, believe that America must stand up for what is right. We don't walk away from our allies. We stand with them. We don't let tyrants win. We oppose them. We don't merely watch global events unfold. We shape them. That's what it means to be the indispensable nation. That's what it means to be the world's superpower and the world's leading democracy. Some of our MAGA Republican friends reject that vision. But this vote makes it clear. There is a bipartisan consensus for that kind of American leadership. That's exactly what we'll continue to deliver. I thank you all very much, and now I'm going off to make a speech at the hotel that I'm late for, and I have plenty of time to answer questions on this and other matters.
Can I ask a quick one on TikTok? Mr. President, do you have a message for the protesters on campus?
Okay, you were just listening to President Biden speaking about how he has just signed this $1 billion aid package into law. He spoke about some of the highlights, that this would include equipment for Ukraine from, quote, our own stockpiles, funding our own national security and our industrial base, and funding jobs in various states that allies in Europe are also helping. But also what's interesting about this bill is a provision that includes the future of TikTok. I'm joined now by my co-anchor, Morgan Radford here. We want to bring in senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez. Gabe, you were listening to this at the same time we were. What stood out to you? What are some of the highlights in his messaging on Israel as well?
Hi there, Vicki. Good morning. Well, yes, as you mentioned, the president taking a victory lap of sorts and, saying that this was, quote, a good day for world peace. That's how he started his remarks. And this comes after intense negotiations over the past few months, Vicki. And, we're learning a little bit more about those behind-the-scenes negotiations where the Biden administration was deeply involved with congressional leaders trying to get this over the finish line. Now, it was back in October, Vicki, that the president delivered that prime-time address here at the White House, really making the case for a national security package. Well, it took several months, but finally, this is the result. And we're learning that he really reached out to Speaker Mike Johnson over the last few weeks and even directed his team not to antagonize Speaker Johnson. And one point that I did notice, Vicki, the president also brought up the issue of this package not including border security. Of course, you'll recall that in the first supplemental aid request that the Biden administration put forward, there was a request for border security. There was even a bipartisan border security bill that made it past the Senate, but the House was dead set against it, and former President Trump tanked it, essentially, by urging Republicans to vote against it. I found it interesting that President Biden really didn't go after Republicans much. He really, in these remarks, thanked Speaker Johnson for getting what he was able to over the finish line. And of course, he made the case once again to the American people of just how important this equipment, this humanitarian aid, and these munitions are to Ukraine, but also to Israel. One thing that did not come up in these remarks, Vicki, you alluded to it, the provision that would require the sale of TikTok within the next 9 months to a year. The president did not mention that. We heard some of the questions that were asked to him from reporters. That question's certain to come up. But as you just heard, the president walked away without answering any more questions. He's now heading to a union event here in Washington where he's expected to pick up an endorsement, Vicki.
Gabe, Morgan here. It was interesting how you mentioned and noted that President Biden didn't come after Republicans, that he actually thanked House Speaker Mike Johnson. It was also interesting hearing him really strike this tone of defiance, where he reminded the country we are the indispensable nation. We are the ones who set policy and determine and don't react. But it's also interesting how long it took us to get here, because the White House first sent a request for the security package all the way back in October. So what are congressional leaders who he had to work with ultimately saying this morning? What impact has this delay essentially had on Ukraine?
Well, look, it's been frustrating for the Biden administration, which has said over and over again that Republicans needed to come together and be able to pass this national security package. But as I laid out, this kept going for several months. It was only in the last several weeks that Speaker Mike Johnson changed his mind, essentially, and brought this vote to a floor. Now we're hearing from sources on Capitol Hill that, the Speaker was privy to classified briefings that and other lawmakers who really really stressed the need for this. And also, you remember, Morgan, the urgency of this has really been ramped up in the last several weeks. We've been hearing those reports from the front line in Ukraine that has essentially been saying that Ukraine is losing this war and will lose this war if this aid does not go through Congress. So yes, after several months of these intense negotiations, taking the border security, the controversial border security portion out of it, Speaker Mike Johnson was able to get it over the finish line.
All right, really important reporting there. Gabe Gutierrez joining us from his post there at the White House. Gabe, thank you.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.